Hey guys, it's Abby. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you 19 terrifying TikToks. If you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up, click the subscribe button down below, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok, where I post creative special effects makeup over there, and add me on Snapchat. I vlog my days on my story over there from time to time. With that being said, without further ado, let's get right on into the video. Our first TikTok is by the user Madison Lane. She tells us a story about when she was a child and heard a mimic when she was home alone. Then later she catches a shadow figure on video, which she shows us in this TikTok.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Welcome back, friends. After very many requests, it is finally time to do another scary story time. The story I'm going to be telling you guys about today is actually an encounter that I had that I believe was with a mimic. And before we get started, for those who didn't watch my last video, hi, my name is Maddie. I actually grew up in a very haunted house, had a lot of paranormal activity. And I thought it would be cool to add that I'm currently in the process of having a house built. So in the meantime, I am staying in the house that all of these things happen in. So the house that you see behind me is where this story happened. So to set the scene, there was one night when my family decided at the last minute that they were going to go out to eat for dinner. I currently was not feeling good, so I decided to stay home instead, which would later turn out to be a mistake for me. So about 30 minutes after they left, I'm sitting here in this exact chair. It's already dark outside. I'm sitting here watching a scary movie, which was already a bad idea because I was already a scared kid as it was. But my mom's room, for preface, is right over there. Ignore the tornado my 1-year-old has made on the floor, I apologize. But I was sitting here watching my scary movie when all of a sudden I heard somebody say my name. It sounded exactly like my mom's voice. So at first I was thinking, well, I'm just tripping, you know? So I kind of just talked myself down, told myself I was just imagining things, I already didn't feel good, so I was probably just tired. So I continued to watch my movie. And not even 2 minutes later, coming from where my mom's room is at, I hear her voice go, "Madison." So of course the first thing I do is I text my mom, because nobody else is home, it's just me, so I'm really freaked out. I text her, I'm like, "Hey, I can hear you saying my name. Are you sure you took the boys, or did Dad come and pick them up and take them?" And she just responds back and she's like, "What are you talking about? You literally saw me walk out the door and leave with them." So at this point I'm panicking. So what does my pea brain think to do in the moment? Walk out the door? No. I decided to get out my phone and try to record it so I could show my mom what was going on. So like I said, I'm sitting here in the living room in this chair. All the lights are out because I'm watching a movie, except for the light in my mom's room, because I'll be honest, we were all terrified as my mom's room because that's where the most activity happens. So I'm going to try to explain this the best that I can without you physically seeing it, but I am going to add the video to the end of this video so you guys can actually see it in action, because I promised some proof. So I pause the TV and I start recording my mom's door. Of course the light's on in there, so if something were moving around, you'd be able to see the shadow because it's dark in here. As I'm recording, you see a figure almost look like it's on its hands and knees crawl out of the room. You see the shadow go by, but you can see nothing physically there to make the shadow. So I was like, what the? So I keep recording, and the second time this shadow figure passes by, you can clearly see that it's the outline of someone on their hands and knees crawling back into that room. But like I said, there's nothing there to physically make the shadow. So after processing what I just saw, I finally came to my senses. I got my little booty up and I hightailed it out of this house. I called my mom. I said, there is something in the house. I am not staying here. And I walked my little happy booty all the way down to my Mimi's house. I was not about to stay here. So unfortunately, with a stitch on TikTok, it will not let you upload an already recorded video to your video. So I emailed myself the video and I'm going to show you it off of my daughter's iPad. But let's remember, guys, this happened years and years ago. I was still probably, you know, around 16 years old. So the quality's not going to be good from this phone recording, okay? I'm 25 now, about to be 26. So this is an old recording. Alright guys, so here we go. So right there, you see the shadow come out of the room. Remember, nobody else is home. There's nothing physically there that can make that shadow. Boom. You see something squatted down on the ground trying to go back into the room. I'm sorry, but no thank you. I did recently link my email into my bio. So if you guys have any of your own personal scary stories that you would like me to share, or if you want to hang around and hear some more of mine, that's fun too. I will see y'all later.
I really think that there is something not so good going on in that house. I shared another one of her TikToks in a previous video, and there was something very similar going on where she caught a different shadow figure on camera. So it seems like this is a pattern that happens often there. It really makes me wonder what this thing is and maybe what's the history of the house. How did this happen? One thing I noticed specifically is just in this video, you can see two crosses on the wall behind her. I would assume that she's Christian. I'd also assume, since there's like two on the wall in just this little frame, that there's probably more throughout the house. And it makes me wonder if the crosses are kind of agitating the spirit, in which case it really means that that is not something good. Any entity or spirit or ghost or what have you that is bothered by religious symbols is not something you want to be sharing your home with. But it is just so interesting that it seems like this has been going on for years and years and years. Her family still owns the house. Now she is living in the house as an adult with a child, and she is still experiencing weird stuff there. It's so interesting to me, and I can't imagine dealing with that level of activity in my home. Our next TikTok is by the user Misky Baby. She shares with us that when she was in college in Pennsylvania, she believes that her dorm was haunted and shares the experiences that she had with us.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
I actually have the craziest ghost story that directly affected me during college. So I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I went to a small Catholic college about an hour outside of the city in like a rural area in the Allegheny Mountains, which are a subsection of the Appalachian Mountains. So this is my college. It's St. Vincent College in Latrobe, PA. And as you can see, we have a basilica, like a church, on campus. We also have a monastery with monks and priests. Some of them are even our professors. And it's a beautiful campus. I had a great 4 years, but I am convinced that this place is haunted, and it's honestly like an open secret. Even the religious congregation and stuff, they don't deny it. So the faculty and staff and even like alumni and students have ghost stories and urban legends that they tell about the school, and they're just like kind of like a fun part of the campus culture. But there is actually like a lot of spiritual energy on this campus, mainly because there's a large religious influence, but also our dorms are right against a decently sized cemetery. My sophomore dorm was actually right up against it. And so what happened to me lasted a little bit over a year. It actually went from my freshman year into my sophomore year. So now you have the background on my college campus. But what happened to me was just a bunch of consecutive events. It wasn't like one big thing. And there was, of course, like a peak where things got pretty intense. So my freshman dorm had these things called pods, where just big living spaces for the same gender. So you had about 10 rooms on the outside of the pod, and then you had a living area and bathrooms and showers in the center. So there were anywhere from like 15 to 20 girls living in one pod. In our pod in particular, I experienced a lot of weird things from the start. Showers turning on whenever you walk into the bathroom. There was always knocking late at night within the walls. And this isn't coming from another room. Like, they were cinder block walls. You cannot knock to the other rooms, and it would also jump from wall to wall. Our rooms had really heavy wooden doors, and I remember this because whenever you would close them, like, it would kind of click, so you knew the door was completely shut. And all the time my door would just like open up. Also my closet, we had like closets that opened like this, like you pull them open. I would be sitting in bed doing my homework or schoolwork, and the closet doors would just like crack open or like slowly open while I'm sitting there, and I'm watching it like with my own two eyes. So one night I decided to have my guy friends over, and I had like one guy friend in particular, but these were like his friends. So they came to see my room and everything, and they were sitting up against my bed or like my desk, and I had a picture framed above my desk, and it had like the glass cover on the front. And so we're just sitting there talking, and this is like mounted to the wall, like it's not coming off. This picture, like, I very much loved this picture and did not want it to fall off the wall. So we're sitting there, and there is a guy directly under the picture. It just like all of a sudden comes off the wall and breaks. And it wasn't even hanging there, it like was like boom, like off the wall. Everybody stopped what they were doing and were like, what the hell? But we were like, whatever, that can be explained. Then one night, me and my roommate are walking through the graveyard just to go on a walk, because that is our scenery. And I'm saying bye to my roommate. I'm like, I'm gonna go over to my guy friend's dorm so we can study for this chemistry test. So we're just sitting in his room studying. I'm kind of close to the door, and we hear like a single knock on the door, and we're like, oh, let's not answer it. What if it's a RA? Like, we don't want to get in trouble. There's alcohol in the room. So we ignore it. 15 minutes later or so, there's two louder knocks on the door, and we're like, okay, is someone playing a prank on us? So we wait a little bit, and then we open the door, no one's there. We're like, okay, someone's messing with us. Some more time passes, okay, and all of a sudden there's 3 loud knocks on the door, and I'm right by the door. I swing it open, and no one is there. Like, no one would have time to run away from the door. We would have heard them, we would have seen them. We're so creeped out, we get out of the room and we go to like the other rooms in his pod, and we like are like, hey, like, are you pranking us? These guys are like in bed. No one's up or hanging out in the living area. everyone is like, no one's messing with you. What are you even talking about? We didn't hear any knocks.
Something about hearing a knock coming from inside of a cinder block wall really freaks me out. I don't know what it is, but I've never tested it, but what she says seems to make sense to me, that you can't like knock to someone on the other side of a cinder block wall. To me, that feels very like soundproof and contained. Like if you're hearing knocking, it's probably coming from your side. And if you're not seeing anyone knocking on your side, then the next best guess would be that it's a ghost. I think it's also really interesting how she explains that it seems to shift from wall to wall. Obviously, that couldn't be from someone on the outside of the wall unless they strategically planned to have like multiple people trying to prank her. But that seems rather convoluted if it never went any farther than that. And then again, with the experience she had, same thing at her guy friend's dorm where they heard knocking, and by the time they reached the door, it was impossible for someone to have ran away that quickly. I mean, thankfully, it doesn't seem like it's out to harm anyone. It just seems kind of playful and wants to be known, but doesn't seem to have any bad intentions. We actually do have another story coming up shortly involving college ghosts. So that may be the theme for today's video. However, I really don't have any reason to think that this couldn't be something paranormal or just a little ghost that hangs out in the dorms with the kids. I don't know. I feel like it seems perfectly reasonable that that's what it was. And I think it's an interesting story to be able to share from college. Not just like college party stories, but college ghost stories as well. The next two TikToks are by the user Vivi Bite. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer. I feel like this first story is very familiar, and I think I may have included it in a past video. However, we do have a follow-up story that is related to the first story. So even if I did share the first story, it is fascinating enough to share again, and we will have a follow-up, which I love when follow-ups appear. I'll be sharing the first story with you, where she explains two stories. One about seeing her father standing in the doorway at night as her actual father is sleeping next to her. And another time where she seems to have magically wandered her house as a baby.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Me, I have one. So growing up, I lived in North Carolina, and our house was 1000% haunted. My sister follows me on here. Like, if she sees this video, she'll corroborate my story because Jesus fucking Christ. So when I was little, my dad was overseas. He was in the military. And so then when he came home, I think I was probably like 8, maybe 9. No, I was 8. And when he came home, I was like, oh, I want to sleep in the bed with daddy. Like, I want to sleep with dad. And he's like, yeah, of course. So I slept in his bed, and his door was open. And I was up that night late reading with a flashlight because I was like, oh, I'm going to blow his socks off reading this book to him. And that night, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. And it was like keys jangling. And so I like go under the covers, have the covers up to here. And in the doorway, I see an apparition of my father. My dad is laying next to me, but I see my dad as plain as day. Oh, it makes me sick just thinking about it. He is like a little bit transparent, like I can kind of see through him, but it's my father. It's 2000s glasses on the back of the head, spiked cargo shorts with the keys on the carabiner. Like, it was exactly my dad. Then he starts going, come here, Vivian. It's my name. Come here, Vivian. And I was like, no way. And I put my covers over my head, and when I looked back out, he was gone. I have so many other stories about that house, but that's the one that sticks with me the most because it scared me so bad. I'll tell you one. I don't remember this. This was told to me by my dad because I was a baby when it happened. But so there is basically 3 stories for our house. There's like the downstairs level that has a pool table, like billiards. And We are on the top floor, so 3 floors above that. And I'm a baby, like baby, sleeping in my crib, can't get out. And then one night, my dad hears me crying. And he goes to my room, crib empty, no baby. He starts freaking out, obviously. And he's searching around the house, following my cry. I'm downstairs, 3 stories down, on top of the pool table. I'm sat on the pool table, like holding a pool ball, crying. I'm telling you, I was probably like 14 months, 15 months. You cannot get out of your crib. Nor could I walk down all those stairs and then get on top of a pool table. Then what? And in that house, me and my sisters, we were on top of the stairs. They're a lot older than me, and they know this story. We were on top of the stairs, and we were looking down into the darkness. Nobody else was home, and we were just like playing with a bouncy ball, like throwing shit down there. You know how kids are stupid. And we threw a bottle cap down there, and it threw back at us, like.
I think it is actually horrifying that there is something pretending to be her father standing in the doorway and is like motioning for her to come closer to it. It's like trying to trap her. I'm glad that she could tell that it was not a good entity or that it was not her father and didn't listen to it. But that is so frightening. Like being tricked by a mimic in your own home as your actual dad is sleeping next to you. But what's even harder to comprehend is how a baby could like get down the stairs, out of their crib, down the stairs, and on top of a pool table. There's no way that that is humanly possible. So I don't know how that could have happened unless there was some kind of entity or some kind of like interference or help. Like she could not have done that on her own as a baby. And I think personally that would freak me out enough that I would not want to live in that house anymore, knowing that it is like physically moving my baby around the house. That personally for me would feel one step too far in the wrong direction and potentially dangerous. In the next TikTok I'm going to show you, she tells multiple ghost stories from her childhood all the way through college.
Okay, so I'm sick, so I sound and look very poorly, but let's lock in. So this nice person just said, like, you might have something attached to you. And I was like, don't say that, because when I was younger, like, I really thought that. My entire life, I have experienced so many, like, paranormal or weird shit, and I'll just tell you a couple. So in that particular house, like, when I would get off of school, I'd get off the bus and I'd go home alone. And I had a key to unlock the garage door, and then you lock the garage door behind you. And you know garage doors are like, they're like metal doors. They're like heavy doors. And I would be in the kitchen making myself some ramen, and that door would be wide open again. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I spent a lot of time outside because things would scare me so badly after school when I was alone that I would just sit outside and wait for my mom to come home. Another instance is just like me being downstairs again making ramen after school and hearing like the shower turn on, and when I go up there, like, I turn off the water and then I run outside. Or there's been times where I was taking a shower and the water just got really cold, which, you know, could be the hot water heater not working, or the light would turn off while I was showering and the water would get cold, or the water would get cold. Again, maybe the light bulb died, maybe the hot water heater didn't work, but that would only happen to me. Like, we went through so many light bulbs because of me. Then my family moved to Minnesota, and I've experienced a couple of haunted things happening here. One story that me and my dad shared together, and it was so funny that this was like his first experience like with me as an older person, so I could be like, you felt that, you felt that. I'll do that one another time if everyone wants to hear that, because that's like, it'd be a longer story. The one I want to say that is about this comment, you might have something attached to you. So my freshman year of college, I was living in a dorm. Shout out Tintin, that was my freshman roommate. Um, when I was living in my dorm, one night I woke up and I was like terrified. I don't remember dreaming anything, but I just woke up and I felt like so much anxiety. It was like a shot out of the dark and just sat up like whoop. And I was looking around, and in like between our beds there was just like a dark tall figure, and it was just kind of looming. Like it wasn't standing on the ground, it was just like a cloud, like a black cloud. And I was so mad because this has been happening to me my entire life. I'm 18 at this point, maybe 19. And this has been happening for as long as I can remember. Something crazy, something weird happening to me. And I was so mad that I was just like, get out. Like, I told him to leave, and it dissipated. And ever since then, I haven't experienced really anything too strange. Like some dreams and some other weird stuff, but nothing that is like, that's fucking a ghost story, you know? And I'm 24 now, so it's been like 5 years. Yep, that's what I know. That's what I know.
I feel like there's a lot to touch on in this video, but specifically the shower turning on by itself is one that really weirds me out. Obviously, going along with that, the water pressure or the water temperature changing might not be paranormal. I know sometimes if there's too many people using the water, it can kind of mess up the water temperature, or it has to like readjust or something like that. I've had that experience plenty of times before, so I don't think that that can 100% be written off as paranormal. But obviously a shower turning on by itself is not something that's normal. And I feel like it's one thing like for a toilet to kind of flush by itself, but like showers don't turn on by themselves. So there's not really a good explanation for that one, as well as the garage door, the like interior door opening and closing. That should not happen. I mean, doors shouldn't just open and close on their own anyway, but I feel like she said, those doors are heavy enough. They don't just like move by the wind. And especially once it's latched, it should not be opening up by itself. Delving into the experience in college, seeing a shadow figure standing in between you and your roommate's bed. I mean, major props to her for standing up to it and like getting it to go away. But man, that would be so scary, especially there's not much room in between those beds in a dorm. So I can't imagine that this thing was very far away from her. Definitely a very scary situation, and it's so interesting how it seems like the paranormal has kind of followed her all her life. Our next TikTok is by the user TazberryJam. She tells us about a time she had a dream about a ghost as a child, and it turned out to be real.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
I have one. When I was 16, 17 years old, my bedroom was the attic of my parents' house. One night, I proceed to have one of the most real feeling dreams I've ever had. In the dream, I'm sleeping in my bed. I wake up in the dream to an older woman standing in the corner of my bedroom. I do not know this woman, never seen this woman. She actually looked quite ghost-like, a little translucent. You could see through her a bit. Like she looked like a ghost. She proceeds to ask me, I have a son. He needs someone to play with. Would you mind playing with him? Not sure why I chose to say yes, but I did. And I was like, yeah, I'll totally play with your son. That seems totally normal. Like, we're in a dream, so, like, fine, I'll play with your son. As soon as I say, yeah, I'll play with your son, he appears, like, if I'm laying in my bed, like, she's on this side, he appears on this side of the room, like, right where the stairs are, the top of the steps. And he starts to walk over to my bed, comes to my bed, and he's like, let's play arm wrestling. So I'm like, yeah, no problem. Let's play arm wrestling. So I put my hand up like this. He puts his hand in my hand, and we are arm wrestling. At first, it's like a good give and go. We're like, oh, yeah. And then, like, he pins my hand completely down. I feel his hand, hold on. I feel his hand around my hand, ice cold. He pins my hand down and is staring at me. And I'm like, okay, like, let's play again. And he goes, I don't think you want to play this game with me. Just like that, like, dead stare. I don't think you want to play this game with me. So I'm like, what does that mean? Let's play, like, okay, let's play the game. So he goes, no problem. Digs his nails into my hand like that and starts pinning my hand to the bed, yelling, I win, 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 I win. I rip my hand away from his. I feel the scratch marks on my, like, right here. And then he takes a step back with this, like, grin on his face. And he becomes this, like, black cloud of smoke. And I know that sounds unreal, but just stay with me. So he's this big cloud of smoke. This is all still in the dream. I get up, I'm screaming, I jump out of my bed. Here's where it gets crazy. I jump out of my bed in the dream and I wake up in real life and I am fully standing on my feet. So as I'm standing on my feet, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? I'm down the stairs, out the room, right? And so my mom and my sister are downstairs in the kitchen cooking breakfast. My mom is a very spiritual person, so I have no problem just being like, yo, this is what just happened. And it's like, disregard the dream if you want, but I was fully standing when I woke up. Insane. And so typically, not saying typically like this happens all the time to me, but like my mom we regularly would have priests come over, bless the house, things like that. So like, that's not weird. So like my mom throwing holy water around the house is not like an odd thing in my household. So like, I'm expecting her to be like, okay, let me go get the holy water. I'll spray your room down. Like, not a big deal. She goes, the holy water is right there. You're going to go get it and go upstairs and throw it around your room with some salt. I'm like, why are you not doing it? She's like, I think you should do it. And I'm like, okay, this is insane. So I take the salt, I take the holy water, I go upstairs. My sister's like, I'll come with you, but I'm staying at the bottom of the stairs. Everybody's acting scared. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is something. So I have the holy water, I have the salt, I go upstairs. I have the holy water in like a little cup, and I have the salt. I go upstairs, and so I'm like throwing the holy water around, just a little flap around. And I have the salt, and I throw it onto my bed, and it sizzles. Bitch. I never ran down a flight of stairs faster in my life. I don't even think I touched one step. I jumped from the top 11 steps down, bow, hit it. I was downstairs the next flight, bow, hit it. I didn't stop for shit. I said the only way I'm going back up there is if y'all bring a priest to hose this house down with a fire truck of holy water. I'm not playing at all with y'all. And so my mama got the priest to come, and he blessed the whole house, top to bottom. He didn't miss no floor, no nook, no cranny. And I never had an experience like that again. So I don't know where that little boy is at, but I hope his soul is at rest, because
I'm sorry, the water sizzling on the bed is one of the crazier things I think I've ever heard. I don't even know how to explain how that makes me feel. Like, the first time I heard this, I literally started laughing because I was like, of course it did. Like, of course the water sizzled, because it was something that bad. And, the first half of the story was crazy enough, with the woman asking her if she wanted to play with her son, which no was probably a better answer. But I wonder if it's like this lady knows that her son's like a little crazy demonic spirit boy, and it's like a test, like, do you want to play with my son? I don't know, there were just Sorry, the range is like picked up, so if you can hear that, I'm sorry, I don't know how to turn off the weather, but we very much need this rain in Southern California, so I don't know if I want to anyway. But the way she describes the nails gripping into her hand and him, very stereotypically horror movie, being like, I win, and I feel like I can picture his eyes like then glowing red and like a demonic, like his voice starts like into that demonic robotic voice. Like that's something you'd see in a horror movie. Like that's just where my mind takes me from hearing her story. It is so frightening. But then again, going back to the bed, pouring holy water on it or spritzing holy water on it and hearing a sizzle, that's just too much for me. Way too much for me. I would never sleep in that room ever again. Such a crazy story. I really loved this story because it was so shocking. Love her. Like, she is a great storyteller, and I am very frightened after hearing this. Our next TikTok is by the user Hope Ray and Libby. She shares a story about how she came into contact with a negative entity while staying at her mom's old house after a bad breakup.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
I hate that I've tried to record this a few times and I keep having a technical difficulty. Gotta love it. So, when I was in my very early 20s, I was engaged. I moved to Virginia with my ex-fiance and it didn't work out. It was a really rough experience and I had to get home right away. So, I'm going home. I don't know where I'm going to be staying. My dad no longer lives in San Diego where I'm from. So I'm like, shoot, where am I going to go? My grandmother calls me and she tells me that my mom's house is currently vacant. My mom has extreme manic depressive bipolar and she's just generally a very selfish individual. So she and I do not communicate. But my grandmother shares with me that she is removed from her home currently and she has no idea what state the home is in, but it is habitable for me, so I can live there while I figure out a roommate situation where I'm gonna live. So I reluctantly say, okay, this is what I have to do. So I get to the house. It is not in a very good neighborhood. It's a townhome, but I have it to myself, and I'm a little sketched out more of the neighborhood than anything else, but whatever. This is where I'm going to live because it's where I have to. So I open the front door for the very first time, get the key and open it. And this wave of like intense heaviness washes over me. And I am just overwhelmed with the state of the home. Like right when you walk in, there's the living room and the stairs. And, I just looked to the left in the living room and it's in shambles. You can tell like the couch has a dent in it. She's been laying in it for so long. And I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to be here. And I feel this like intense heaviness. And I don't take that as a red flag right away. I just think, oh, it feels heavy because it's my mom's house and I don't want to be here. And I've just gone through this traumatic event in my life and whatever, we'll make the best of it. So looking around the house, I can see that the kitchen is disgusting. Like there's rotted food, like in the fridge, on the counter, in the sink. It's disgusting. I go upstairs and her room is dark and icky and I don't want to be in there. So I just pass it. So up the stairs, there's her room at the top of the bathroom and then the guest room. So I'm like, whatever, I will start with the guest room and make it my own, clean it, take care of it. Because my mom's manic bipolar, she collects. So the guest room took a very long time, putting things away, reorganizing furniture, cleaning, throwing away trash. I am finally starting to make some headway on the guest room and feeling pretty good about it. So one night I'm sleeping and I wake up, I'm on my side and I wake up and I see the alarm clock and it's the magic hour, it's 3 a.m. So I'm like, great. And as that's processing, I realize I can feel something at the side of the bed, demanding, like standing there, almost like you can't hear or feel breathing, but there's like this intensity. And I'm like, oh, I know what this is. I know exactly what this is. And if you know about these things, if you hear something, no, you didn't. If you see something, no, you don't. keep moving. So I'm like, whatever, and I go to bed. When I wake up in the morning, I realize, okay, this is what we're dealing with. So I don't know exactly what I'm dealing with, but I just choose to ignore it. So I finish cleaning up the room and I start making my way towards cleaning the living room and the main level. So as I'm going up and down the stairs, clean the main level, and the house is getting lighter, it's feeling airier, it's feeling healthier, like the vibe is feeling healthier, I start to smell this nasty, rotting smell at the top of the stairs. When you like go up the stairs, you see her room right away, and every single time, just this intense, nasty smell. And I'm like, oh God, I know what this is, but I just have to ignore it. So I keep cleaning, keep making the space feel better, all the while basically cohabiting with this being that desperately wants my attention. And I know it wants my attention. The best way I can describe whatever this was is that it was not human. Also a red flag. This was not a spirit. This was a thing. It felt young. It felt curious about me. It almost felt like I got this vibe, like, where's the other one at? Like my mom, like, where's the other one at? Like it wanted her negative energy and her like rotting that she would do. And I didn't give that. I was providing positivity and brightness and openness to this new space. And it was not happy with me for that. As I was cleaning the home, I would generally avoid my mother's room. One, because I don't have a relationship with her, so I didn't really care to be in her room or clean it. That's her business. But also just the darkness in there. And like, I swear sometimes that door was open and I would close it. Sometimes I would go to the top of the stairs, smell the smell, see the darkness in her room, and just be like, why is that door even open? And for some reason that room called to me. And I went in a couple times and went through her things, which is so not like me. I have no interest in going through her things, but I remember going in there, and I don't remember much of what happened while I was in there. I remember going through old pictures of me and my sister from when we were kids. I remember going through her closet, but that's about it. And the whole time I would be in there, I would just feel warbly and off, very out of body experience. There's a filter kind of like this. These are kind of my memories of being in that room, going through pictures, going through the closet. I don't really remember much. So I'm really starting to make progress on the cleaning. I've accepted that I'm cohabitating with this little creature, whatever it is. So I'm minding my business, and I don't hang out in places that it likes, primarily my mom's room and the living room where she would rot for days and weeks. I just mostly hung out in the guest room when I wasn't cleaning or working or trying to find a place, and I would watch TV on my laptop. So finally, D-Day comes. It's time to get to the kitchen. I'm going in and out of the kitchen from the guest room. I avoided that living room. Guest room, down the stairs, through the hallway, kitchen. And I'm watching TV on my laptop, holding it, walking through the hallway. And lately, I feel like the being had kind of just accepted I wasn't going to give it attention, but I was still ever present that it was there. And I knew I wouldn't hang out with it in the living room. So I'm walking into the kitchen, holding my laptop, living room behind me, kitchen in front of me. And my laptop just dies. Just the black mirror just dies. And I know it's charged. I know I charged it. So I'm like, what the heck? And something comes over me. I realize, do not look at that computer and do not turn around. Deep in my soul, do not. This thing wants your attention. It wants either to show you it in that black mirror or to get you to turn around to go back into that room. You're going to see something if you look in this laptop screen or turn around. So I just shut the laptop, walk into the kitchen, keep cleaning. I didn't even notice the laptop had died. After a few minutes, I go, oh, my laptop died. Audibly say it. I pretend I didn't notice, and go get the charger, bring the charger back down into the kitchen, and keep cleaning. After the home was pretty much cleaned, within a few days, I ended up finding a roommate and finding a place. So I moved out, left that behind, never experienced that little creature or critter ever again. Thank goodness. But yeah, that was a really intense, it was like a battle of wills. This thing was almost like a child, but it wasn't a human, but it felt like a childlike presence. And it was just, look at me, demanding my attention. And I wouldn't give it any attention. So we just were kind of fighting over who was going to get their way. And I just ignored it until it went away or I was able to leave. I don't speak to my mom much. I never told her about this experience, but from what I understand in the times I do have to interact with her, she has gotten a new place. And this is kind of what confirms for me that this was not a ghost, because ghosts haunt places, other things haunt people. And my mom has said, or I have heard that in her new place, she has suddenly stopped liking to stay in her guest room or her master bedroom, and she sleeps in the guest room because something in the master doesn't feel right, and it feels like she's not alone in her master bedroom. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. I realize that sounds like a script or like a baseline for a really messed up movie, and it could have gone a lot worse than it did. Thank God it didn't. But no, that's a true story. And as far as I know, that thing still hangs out with my mom and her negative energy to this day.
I think this is a perfect representation of how I always say that energies can create negative entities slash spirits, whatever word you want to use for that. When there is a large amount of negative energy in a space, it can just collect and almost create its own little monster. And that monster continues to feed off of the negative energy and wants to create more of it. And I think it can also become a dangerous situation. It's a snowball effect. It's like you have this negative entity around you and it's sucking from you and trying to make you more negative, and then you're feeding into it, and then it just keeps going around and around and around, and the situation continues to get worse. And it really does seem like that is probably a kind of situation that her mom was dealing with. Obviously, she mentioned that her mom had like diagnoses and issues that she was dealing with as well. But I feel like being in an environment where there is that kind of negative energy around you, it probably does not help. And it seems like she said that this thing was attached to her. So it was very interesting that she had this experience and was able to kind of live there successfully despite that, because she never fed into it and always would ignore it. And I will say props to her for not being curious enough to kind of like play into it a little bit just to learn about it, or sneak a peek at it or something like that, because that could have ended very disastrously and could have sent her into a kind of bad situation as well. Our next TikTok is with user Caitlin Noel 24. She tells us a crazy story about an unknown entity that she would experience at her dad's house that would shift around her bedroom furniture.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I have been waiting for this day. Okay, I have two, but I'm going to say the most scary, or the scariest one. So I was probably about 18, 19 years old at the time. I'm from Northwest Indiana. I was in my dad's house, and I already got like weird vibes from the house to begin with. Like when they toured it to buy it, there was some like red stains on the bathroom tile. And I was like, you're really gonna buy a house with like red stains on the bathroom tile? You're weird. Anyways, so when one night when I was about 18, 19 years old, and pause, time out. I've already had, like, my first ghost experience was before this one that I'm going to say. So I'm already on edge. And the first one happened probably about 2 weeks prior to this one. So I'm already on edge. I already don't want to go, like, back to my dad's house. But my parents are divorced, so, like, court ordered that I have to. So about 18 years old, I'm at my dad's house. And how their house is set up is when you go up the stairs, you have a bedroom on your left, a bedroom on your right, and then it goes, it's kind of like a big U shape. And then there's a bedroom up front and then another bedroom up front on the other side. So I'm the left-hand bedroom as soon as you go up the stairs. So I have a clear shot. I can see right down the stairs from my bedroom. So one night, it's probably, I don't even know what time it is at this point, but I hear rustling at the end of my bed. And my dad has a shooting club. He goes and he comes back. He likes to play pranks. So I'm thinking it's my dad, right? Well, I wake up. I see this like 8-foot tall, slender, black figure at the end of my bed. And for those of you who know my dad's my height. And he's like 5'7", 5'8", so not like 8 foot tall. This motherfucker is like big, right? So I start freaking out because I'm like, who is this person in my room messing at the end of my bed that can easily climb on my bed and attack me? So I'm like hurrying over to my nightstand. I turn on my light and I see this 8-foot tall black slender figure bolt out of my room and down the stairs. So while I'm like processing that, I realize all of my furniture in my room is flipped upside down. The desk at the end of my bed flipped upside down. The chair at the end of my bed flipped upside down. My dresser pulled away from the wall, drawers out. My ceiling height organizer in my corner of my room is on the floor with everything placed in it neatly. It's like meticulous how chaotic this was. My closet door open. So of course I'm freaked out. I'm like, what the hell? So all my lights are on. I get out of my room and I go check on my little sister who's across the hall from me. She's sleeping. I go and I check on my other little sister who's around the corner in the other front bedroom. She's sleeping. And I'm like, that had to have been my dad, right? That had to have been my dad. So I open their bedroom, my dad and his wife's bedroom door. They're both passed out sleeping. Like you can hear them snoring type sleeping. So then I hear rustling downstairs and I'm like, scary movies tell me not to go downstairs, but here I am going downstairs. So I go downstairs, and where our stairs are, there's like a little pocket about this big where you can stick your head through and look into the kitchen. So as I'm about to do this, there's this voice in the back of my head saying, do not look. Do not look. And I'm about to look and I'm like, I'm not dying today. So I don't look. I head back upstairs. I shut my door. I lock it and I sleep with the lights on. Mind you, I look at the time when all this happens, 3:33. 3:33 in the morning. Witching hour. It's the witching hour. So I'm scared. I go back to bed at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. My dad unlocks my door. And he's like, what the hell are you doing with all the lights on? Turn them off. And he starts turning the lights off. I've put my room back together. I just go into scared mode, right? So my room's put back together. The next morning, I lock my door again after he leaves. The next morning I wake up and I tell my dad and my stepmom about this. And they look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, there's no way that happened. My dad was like, I looked in your room at 6 o'clock. Your furniture was fine. I said, because I flipped it. Because I was so scared that I went just back into whatever mode I was in, fight or flight. And I just put my room back. And so they never believed me. Well, then a few weeks later, probably, I want to say maybe 3 weeks later, I'm at their house again. I'm babysitting and they come home. I tell them nothing happened. Everything's fine. Well, I go to bed and then I hear rustling from my closet. I hear little rustling from my closet and I'm like, God Cam, this is not, I'm not gonna die. So like I put my dresser in front of my closet door like a little bit so it can't open, and I go to bed. The next morning, my dresser is put back where it is and my closet door is open. Never have figured it out. They eventually moved out of the house. They're in a new house. I moved out. I refuse to go back to that house because I'm so freaked out about it. That was only the second and like third-ish like ghost experience I've had in that house. The first one was even more terrifying, but I don't have enough time to tell that one. So yeah, that's my ghost story. That's my ghost experience, ghost story. Hope you like it. 8-foot tall Slenderman figure.
I really think that this is a batch of insane stories we have this video. It is just honestly hit after hit with all of these. I don't even know what that would be. It literally like reminds me of some kind of like little goblin creature. Obviously it was not that. It does seem like an entity specifically, but it gives me that kind of a vibe that it's like a little goblin that's messing around at the end of her bed and moving her furniture around. Like, how does one flip upside down furniture and stuff? Like, it was very clearly kind of definitely feels like it was intentionally trying to scare her. And it just, there feels like some kind of poltergeist essence to it. I really don't know how else to think of this kind of entity. This feels like a very unique situation to me. I personally don't understand how she was able to just like walk back upstairs and go straight to bed. I would have absolutely woken up my parents and been like, this happened. But I guess when you're kind of in that fight or flight freaking out mode, it's hard to judge what you would do. Part of me wonders though if maybe this entity kind of guided her to undo all of the work that it did and go to bed, because in that case, no one would believe her. At least if the furniture was still all messed up, it'd be harder to assume that she just like did this in her sleep or something, because that honestly would be almost equally as crazy that a sleeping teen girl could do all of that. I don't think that's possible either. So I don't know. It makes me think that maybe something was like guiding her to undo all of the weirdness, so there was no evidence left over. So crazy. And I think it's really interesting that then when the next time she was hearing something coming from her closet and she tried to trap it in there and it magically moved her dresser back away from the closet. There's just like a lot of things in this story that are very hard to explain, and I feel like are very out of the ordinary for our typical paranormal story times. Our next TikTok is by the user featuring Jergs, and this is the college story I referred to earlier. He tells us about a time where he played the Ouija board in his college dorm, and some crazy things happened after the fact.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, I haven't told this story in a long time for a few reasons. The first is because anytime I tell this story to a skeptic, they're always like, oh yeah, I'm sure this happened, blah blah, ghosts. Like, I don't give a fuck if you believe in ghosts or not, bro. I really don't. It makes no difference to me. This is just what happened. The second reason is I really don't want to disrespect the family of the spirit that we ended up coming in contact with. But if you went to or currently go to Ryerson or TMU, then you're probably going to want to hear this story. I went to school there. I lived in residence for my freshman year, and this is like 8 years ago now, but I will literally always remember what happened this night. So I lived on the 4th floor, but all of the friends that I hung out with lived on the 6th floor. That's important for later. One night we all went to this house party in North York. We like all showed up together. It was like a group of 8 of us. And when we got there, the girl that was hosting the party ended up having a Ouija board upstairs and people were using it. Now, if you know me at all and you know my two options are to just randomly socialize with a bunch of strangers at this college party or go upstairs and use a Ouija board in a dark room, then I'm obviously gonna go upstairs and use a Ouija board in a dark room. So we go the full 9 yards. We turn the lights off, candles on, doors locked, totally dark. We're sitting in a circle around the planchette and we're ready to fucking go. Now, at this point in my life, I had used a Ouija board once before and it worked, so I volunteered to lead the charge and like do like the talking, but as long as everybody was in agreement that no one was going to be secretly moving the planchette. And the way that Ouija boards work, if it's ever worked for you, you have to be open to the spirits coming to you. So if you're a non-believer, or you're a skeptic, or you have any sort of that energy at all, it's not going to work. And it didn't work while we were at this house. So we get back to our residence, and a few of us are like, damn, we really wanted the Ouija board to work. Maybe we should try again here. Now, we didn't have an official Ouija board like this girl did at our house, but you can make a Ouija board out of anything. And there's 4 of us who want to do this, me and my 3 girlfriends. And each of us are believers. We believe in the other side. We believe in the spirits. We are open to this entire endeavor. So we're like, okay, whatever. Let's just make a Ouija board. Like I said, they all lived on the 6th floor. We went to the common room on the 6th floor. We ended up having to use one of their roommates' cutting boards. Hannah, sweetie, I'm so sorry. We actually wrote letters in Sharpie on her cutting board, and we ended up having to cut it up and burn it because we ended up each getting haunted, but that's later down the line. I actually don't even know if we ended up getting her another cutting board. So Hannah, I'm so sorry. So we get to the common room. It's the 4 of us. 3 of us sit around the table. My best friend Abby is just spectating. She's actually on my shirt right now. And she's like, I'm gonna watch. I'm not gonna participate because I don't want to be haunted. And I was like, okay, fair enough. I'm actually gonna go and try to commune with the spirits myself. So the 3 of us make the most solemn vow. We're like, okay, if we're gonna do this, none of us are gonna be secretly pushing the planchette like that. That won't fly here. About 20 minutes in, when we're about to give up, the planchette moves from the middle of the board down to the word hi. And the 3 of us look at each other, we're stunned because you can tell when the planchette moves. I think we were using a shot glass or something, but you can tell when that instrument is moving. It's almost like it's moving from the bottom of the object. The board itself is pulling it. You could feel if one of the other people around you was moving it. You can tell where the force is coming from. The force was coming from below the shot glass, the rim of the shot glass, because it was upside down and it was pulling it, and our fingers were just on top of it. So we look at ourselves and we're like, holy fuck, it's working. And obviously we want to know if we're talking to, some good spirit or the devil himself. So immediately we're like, okay, are you a good spirit or a bad spirit? And it spells out G-O-O-D. So we're like, oh. Next question I asked the spirit, did you die here? Just because I'm a nosy bitch. Planchette moves to the word yes. So now we're stunned. We're gagged. We're like, wait, someone died here? Before we can ask it any more questions, and this is a memory that I will literally never forget. This is something that still haunts me to this day. The planchette, or the shot glass we were using, starts moving slowly across the board from one corner to the other corner, and then it starts going so fast, and I swear to God, the 3 of us were just in a full-on trance. And my best friend Abby can tell you, because she was watching us from the outside, from the couch. She was literally looking at us like we were hypnotized. It starts moving back and forth so fast, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then it stops, does a big circle around the board, and goes back to the word hi. I swear to God, the pang of dread that filled my body in that moment, I was like, holy shit, we're talking to a demon. The 3 of us look at each other and we're just like, oh my God, we can't take our fingers off of it because now we know that we've summoned something bad, A. And if we just take our fingers off of it, we're each gonna be haunted. So we try to say goodbye to it. But like I said, I'm a nosy bitch, so I want to find out who we're talking to. Am I talking to Satan? Let's figure it out. So the first question I ask, is this the same spirit we were just talking to? The shot glass goes down to the word no. By now it's 3 in the morning, which is not the time to be using a Ouija board, by the way. So now we're all pretty scared, and I asked the board, did you hurt the spirit we were just talking to? And the planchette goes down to yes. And so obviously my next question is, are you a bad spirit or a good spirit? And the planchette goes down to bad. And then I ask, do you want to hurt us? And it goes to yes. Immediately the 3 of us look at each other and we're like, goodbye. And we bring the planchette down to goodbye. Because that's how you're supposed to close the tether between you and the spirit when you open it up with the Ouija board. Somehow we managed to go to sleep that night. We're telling our friends the next day all about this, about what happened, whatever, and the week goes on. Nobody really believes us. Everyone thinks that one of us was secretly moving the planchette the whole time. Now remember, these girls lived in the same room on the 6th floor. I lived on the 4th floor, but there was an American in the room and the rest of us were Canadian. So they had one American flag and one Canadian flag hanging in their room. And they told me for that entire week, every single day at around 5:15-ish, the flags would fall. And they knew this was happening because the sound of it would wake them up. It could be a coincidence that the flags are falling, obviously, because they're not hung up properly or they're whatever's hanging them up is too weak, but every day for a full week at like 5 in the morning, that's just like not coincidental. I'm also starting to feel like weird presences when I'm trying to go to sleep. I had like this dark hallway in my room that led to my front door. Like I lived in a single, and so you had to walk a little bit before you got into like my actual room, and there was no light there, obviously. So whenever I was going to sleep, it literally looked like, I don't even know, it just felt like someone was standing in the darkness watching me sleep. And I think to myself, wow, the good spirits said that they died here, so like let me look up to see if anybody's actually died in this residence. Again, I'm going to keep names out of this out of respect for the family, but you can easily look it up. So we find out not only did a student die in this residence, they died on the 6th floor in the room that these girls were living in. And to make matters even scarier or freakier, the manner of death after autopsy was inconclusive. Like this student had diabetes, so they were like, okay, we're just gonna say that it was like causes by diabetes, but there was actually no like conclusive evidence to show that it was that did this person in. And their time of death was between 5 and 6 a.m. So you can say what you want about Ouija boards, about whatever else about this story. I personally don't care. That's exactly what happened to us, and any of my friends that were there can corroborate it. But if you currently live in residence in Pittman Hall on the 6th floor in that corner unit and weird things are happening, I'm so sorry. That is totally our fault. And Hannah, sweetie, if you see this, let me know where you're at. Let me know your address so I can send you a new cutting board. Sorry.
I think it is so interesting that they were able to match it back to an actual person who previously lived there and passed. It's very sad that it seems like they're unfortunately still kind of hanging around there, but it is so interesting that that connection was able to be made. With that being said, I'd like to go into my usual statement of please never pick up a Ouija board. Please never mess with them. You don't know what you're letting in. You don't know who you're talking to, and things can get really bad. I do love hearing Ouija board stories though. Big fan of hearing those stories. I just want nothing to do with the actual board itself, and I want to keep as many people safe from it as I can. Our next 2 TikToks are by the user Mariah Rose 0. I'm gonna play these TikToks back to back, but this is her story of how she was haunted by purses she was gifted from her boyfriend's dad.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
Let me start off by saying I don't talk about this often because when I do, I sound crazy. A few years ago, I was gifted two purses by my ex-boyfriend's dad's friend. I accepted the purses and I noticed that I was having these reoccurring nightmares with this lady in each nightmare. So one night, I fell asleep. My ex-boyfriend was sitting at the computer. He's gaming and whatnot. This lady pops up in my dream, but this dream is a little bit different because she was jumping in everybody that I loved's body and trying to get them to themselves in a frozen lake. So I was pulling them away, and she didn't like that very much. And then she refocuses on me, and she's running after me, and I'm running, but it's, you know how in dreams, like, you can't run very fast, like it's always in slow-mo or you punch slow. Well, in this dream I was running fast, and each time that I was looking back at her, she was gaining on me, and I got a glimpse of pretty much all of her features, like what she was wearing, what her hair looked like. It was black, it curled into her neck, and she just looked very mad. So eventually this lady, she gets me. She was wearing like a blue, long, almost Victorian type dress. She had black straight hair that curled into her neck. And she looked very mad. And so she eventually gets me, and I was woken up by my ex-boyfriend, who said that I sat straight up in bed and started hyperventilating with my eyes rolled in the back of my head. I woke up absolutely terrified. I had no idea what was going on. He had no idea what was going on. He thought I was having a seizure of some sort, and I was petrified to go to sleep. I called my grandma and I explained to her what was going on. I told her I'm tired of this, like it's causing me to lose sleep. I don't want to fall asleep. I don't want to see this lady anymore. I don't understand who she is or why this is happening, but I feel like I'm being haunted. So then, fast forward to a few days later, I see Joe again. I need to make a part 2. Part 2 of the paranormal experience. Fast forward to a few days later, I had seen Joe again. So then, at that point, I felt like I made the correlation that this could have been happening because it could have been related to the purses somehow. So then I asked him, where'd you get the purses from? And he had told me that they belonged to his ex-girlfriend. So from there, I had asked him, you know, is she still in the picture? Is she around here somewhere? And he had told me that she had herself a few years prior. And then I asked him for a photo. And he pulls out his wallet. And in the picture, it's him and her. And it's literally the same lady from my dream. That same exact lady. And my ex was standing right next to me as we were talking about this whole thing. And I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Like, I couldn't understand, I couldn't believe it. And so I ended up getting rid of the purses, and I haven't had anything like that happen ever since. Like, till this day, nothing else has ever happened like that since.
First of all, it's really sad what happened to his ex-girlfriend, but I think the connection between her taking her own life and in the dream, her almost possessing everyone that Mariah cared about and forcing them to do the same, I think that is a really interesting connection to make. It feels like extreme, but part of me is like, I wonder if this girl was just really not happy with her old purses being given to Mariah, the new girlfriend. Like, I feel like, to me, that seems like the most logical explanation. She was just not comfortable with it, and she chose to, like, freak her out, kind of. I don't know, almost feels kind of like a threat in a way. It just feels very, not perfect, but, like, perfect how everything seems to line up. And that, again, to me, seems like the best explanation. The coincidence between all of that just seems to be too great to actually be a coincidence. And I can't imagine the shock of her seeing the photo of the ex-girlfriend and being like, oh my God, that is who I saw in my dream. It's really a crazy experience, and it kind of further proves why I believe that, like, dreams are just another extension of reality. Our next 3 TikToks are by the user Moonchild1300. I'm going to show you the first 2 TikToks back to back, as it is part 1 and part 2 of the story. She tells us about a time she was moving into a new home with her mom and her mom's boyfriend at the time, and she experienced what can only be described as a dangerous negative entity trying to emerge from the attic space.
A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I've tried to record this video over like 10 times, and every time my footage keeps deleting, so I'm going to do my best to quickly tell this story. If I don't have a lot of description, I'm sorry. So the story starts off, I am 12, my brother is 6 years old, and my mom has a very long time boyfriend that she is head over heels for, wants to move with him. The only problem is that he lives 50 minutes away, which isn't that bad, but at the time, especially having 2 kids, it was a lot. So one day she brings up to me and my brother that she wants to live with him. She wants us to kind of be a blended family. You know, he has kids, yada, yada, yada. She's like, but to do that, I'm going to have to move up there before you guys do. And you guys are going to have to live with your dad's until the summer. And, you know, you'll come visit me on the weekends, yada, yada, yada. She didn't want to like uproot us and move us away from our home, especially if it didn't work out, because, you know, living with somebody, you kind of got to get to know them. So that's exactly what we did. A month later, they found a house. She moved up there. We moved in with our dads, and we lived with them for a little bit. So the first time that she brought us to the house, she toured us around, and I'll save that story for another day. But the main room that I'm going to focus on is the attic. And during our little tour that she did, you know, excited to show us the house and everything, we go and we look at our rooms. My room is right next to the attic. My brother's room is adjacent, like literally can see it from his doorway. She looks at us and goes, "Do not go up here. Do not go up here. Do not open this door. Do not, none of that." So we're like, okay, you know. And we don't really question it, because when she tells us not to do something, we just don't do it at the time. So we're up there playing, hanging out, you know, checking out the house, having a good time. And the first night we slept downstairs in the living room with them. Second night, I think that they had people over. So obviously adults wanted to have adult time. And she put an air mattress in my brother's room and had us go sleep in there. We shared the bed. So we're laying in there. She leaves the hallway light on, the door open so she can hear us. And we go and lay down. I'm facing the wall. My brother is facing the doorway. And I want to say 20 or 30 minutes go by. I have my headphones in, and I get this gut feeling that I need to be present, that there is a need for me to be present. So I take out my headphones and I lay there, and the feeling doesn't go away. So I'm like, so I ended up facing the way my brother was facing. And my brother was very hyperactive, very moving, very talky, very, you know, especially during bedtime. He was not talking, he was not moving, so I assumed he was sleeping. So I face like his back, and I'm staring out into the hallway. And I remember seeing the attic door slightly open. Just so slightly, so slowly, but it opens. And it didn't scare me. I more or less was just like, no way. So I'm sitting there looking at it, and slowly, as it did, it just goes back and shuts. And as it shut, the hallway light went off. So I realistically tried to be like, oh no, it's just my mom probably thinks we're sleeping, and turn the light off, right? Okay. Well, I lay there for another 10-15 minutes staring at the door, kind of anticipating it opening again. And sorry to cut the video off. I didn't want the stitch to reset or restart. So where I left off is I'm laying there and I'm anticipating the door opening, and it does. It opens again. And at this point, my eyes have adjusted to the dark, you know, whatever. I'm laying there, and the door opens ever so slowly again, little faster than last time, but it opens, and in the doorway, there is a very tall figure, and enough that like it had to bend down to poke its head out, and it did. It poked its head out, and it's looking at me, and I'm looking at it, and we're just looking at each other, and it gives me goosebumps still. And at that point is when I felt actual fear, like scared. And I go to wake my brother up, and I'm like, Zane. And before I can even say his name, he goes, Zoe. I've been awake the whole time. I said, yeah. He goes, do you see it? And I said, yeah. And I said, did you see the door open the first time and the lights go off? And he said, mm-hmm. Whole time we're talking to each other. We're not facing each other. We did not move. We're staring at it. It's staring at us. Like, we not taking our eyes off of it. Okay? So as we're having our little conversation, the door, same pace, slowly shuts. Then goes back in. Okay? We're laying there, and my brother finally goes, like, after a minute or so, he's like, I'm scared. And I was like, okay. I said, well, I'm not going to risk leaving you up here with whatever that is and going and getting mom. So just face me, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. If it does, you won't see it. So as I'm telling him this, it's like what it was new, what we were talking about, or listening to what we were talking about. And with the quickest velocity, the door swings open. And I mean, like, swings open. And we're both laying there in utter terror. The thing is standing in the doorway. We can't move. At this point, we are paralyzed. We are freaking out. And the last time, when it swung open, honestly, I'm shocked that it didn't hit another doorway. Sorry, my dog keeps barking, so I have to keep stopping the video. I'm shocked that it didn't hit anything when the way it swung open. And like I said, we're just laying there, paralyzed, cannot move. And I remember it stayed open a little longer. Things still staring at us. We're trying not to look at it. Like, at this point, we're starting to try to move, do what we can to not look at it. And I got the worst stomach pain when it happened. That it, whatever it was not of good nature, was not good at all. And I forget exactly what happened next, but the door slammed shut. And my mom hears it. So she comes running up the steps, getting ready to yell at us. And she goes, who came out here and turned off the hallway light? And which one of you is messing with the door? Mind you, at this point, I'm still trying to process everything. My brother is crying. So we're not answering her. We're just looking at her like, girl. And I said, you didn't turn off the hallway light? And she goes, no, there's no light switch at the bottom of the steps. There's no light switch to turn the hallway light off. You have to come out here and turn it off. And, like, she's still kind of, like, angrily yelling at us. And I look at it now as, like, maybe she was scared and didn't know what to say. And that's fine. Whatever. Her boyfriend also came up, and he was not one to really believe in the paranormal, at least from what I know. And they're both staring at us, mind you, as well. My mom had turned on the hallway light. She's standing by the attic door, staring at us, talking to us. He's standing right next to her, and I don't know if he could just tell because of our faces, but he's looking at us and he goes, Amber, I don't think it was them. I don't think they did it. And she's like, well, there's no way for the door to have opened, and da-da-da-da. And as she's saying it, the attic door slowly creaks open. And I remember her looking behind her and just stopping and staring for a minute. He's staring, and she just slams that door shut and goes, all right, come on, come downstairs. That is the end of that story. The rest of the time in that house, they did not end up staying together. They ended up getting back together, but they did not live in that house too much longer, maybe like 6 months at most. Nobody used the upstairs. Nobody used the bedrooms. Anytime that all of us kids were there, we would sleep in the room right next to the living room. And every time we came, I swear, in the middle of the night, you would hear the attic door slam. So I don't know what my mom had experienced prior to us coming, or what caused her to tell us to stay away from that, but I truly believe that whatever that was not good. it got the fear it needed from us that night. And I am very glad that honestly she came up after she heard the door slam, because I don't know what would have happened next. We weren't willing to go get her. But yeah, that's my story.
I really appreciate the fact that she immediately felt like she needed to protect her brother and didn't want to leave him there. I think that was for sure the right choice, because given how scared they were, that they were able to make a skeptic believe them before he actually saw the proof just based on how scared they were. I think it definitely was something very, very dangerous. On top of that, again, both adults believed them and were equally concerned enough to say, like, yeah, you got to get out of here, like, come with us, you're not staying in this room anymore tonight, I think says a lot. And then finding out later that her mom had a bad feeling about that area to begin with, which is why she told them not to go there. It all just kind of makes perfect sense. And I'm very glad that they were like believed and were able to get out of that room and not have to deal with that all night long, because who knows how that situation could have escalated. In the third TikTok I'm going to show you, she gives a little bit more background and explains what exactly happened with her mom and the attic to make her tell them not to go near it.
Hi, sorry to get back to you guys so late in the day. I went hiking today and I honestly was shocked at the overwhelming amount of people that were liking and commenting and sharing and favoriting my video. I did not expect it to go that far, so thank you guys. I love the comments. Keep commenting. I like the back and forth of talking to you guys. I want to address the comment above my head, and the answer simply is yes. There was a bunch of things that were happening around the house before we came. The house was a fixer-upper. It was a really old, kind of, I don't want to say Victorian, but old-timey house. It was a historic house, my mom said. And her and her boyfriend fell in love with it. They were gonna buy it. There was, like, the first day that she went and toured it, she kind of already knew there was something weird there. I come from a very spiritual family, so I have a lot of stories and a lot of things that have happened. So if you guys do like hearing this, please let me know and I will keep telling stories. But my family is very, like, on that same level as the paranormal. I used to be able to talk to them and it freaked my mom out. I can see them, she can see them, we get gut feelings. It just kind of runs in our family. It's a thing, we all are aware of it. So yeah, but when she went and toured the house, she said that one of the things, like the big things that got her, was when they went and toured the attic, there was a rotten smell. And many people that do know what that is, it's not a good thing. If you don't, it usually means that there is something other than a spirit around or near. And she smelled it immediately. Nobody else that was up there touring, her boyfriend or the realtor, smelled it at all. So that was her first kind of instinct. And then one night she was left by herself, and she heard a childlike voice saying, "Hello, hi." So she followed it, and it took her to the attic. She said that she got all the way up into the attic and started thinking, like, why would there be a child in my house? My kids aren't here. Nobody's here with me. And that's when, like, she kind of got that sudden jolt of a spine tingle. And she said as soon as she hit the top of the attic steps, when she realized what she was doing, she smelled that rotten smell again and went to run down the steps. And she told me that during that, she felt two hands on the back of her back that just pushed her down the steps. So she fell down the steps and went to grab the railing to, like, pull herself back up, and when she went to grab it, something placed its hand over her hand and immediately freaked her out. Like, as she's telling me this, she's still getting chills. And she said that her fight or flight kicked in to the point that she was like, I gotta go, like whatever this is, it's gonna kill me. So she went to run, and whatever it was that had a hold of her had a good enough, strong enough grip that she like flung herself back into the attic, I guess, like the stair area. And she just kind of in her head kept telling herself like, all right, this is it, this is how they're gonna find me. And whatever it was released grip on her hand, and she immediately shut the door, locked it, and that is why she did not want us to go in the attic. So when that happened, she knew immediately what it was and was not messing with it. Like some of you guys already guessed that something had to have happened with the attic. Yeah. There are many more stories that she told me today. I talked to her for 2 hours and we talked about this house literally the whole time. So, I mean, if I get the likes and the comments and everything, if you guys wanting to see it and being interested in that, I would love to share it with you. I really would. So just let me know.
Now that's a pretty intense experience. I don't know, if I had that experience, I probably wouldn't have taken so long to believe my kids that there was in fact something paranormal going on in their room after experiencing something that negative and, dare I say, demonic myself in an area just next to them. I mean, that is pretty bad. It's a lot more than what I originally had assumed, which was just kind of bad vibes. But, you know, the rotting smell is already a bad sign, but then everything else that followed that is just, it's very, very extreme. Yeah, no wonder that they had a weird experience there that night. Our next TikTok is with user Ivy Solon. She shares with us horrifying experiences she had in a haunted home in the suburbs of Chicago, where I happen to have grown up. So this hits very close to home.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8.
Okay, so when I was about 14, we relocated to the suburbs of Chicago. We're originally from LA, but before that we lived in Texas, and from Texas we relocated to Naperville, Illinois, specifically like the west suburbs of Chicago. And I remember living in that home that my parents had bought. That was beautiful home. It was probably one of the prettiest houses we've ever lived in. With that being said, it was the most fucking creepiest houses we've ever lived in. I remember, as a teenager, you're a fucking shithead. And I just remember like not believing in really anything. I didn't really believe in ghosts growing up in, before these encounters. And I just remember like one night I was in my parents' room, and my parents have these 2 giant French doors that open up into the hallway. All the bedrooms are on the 2nd floor. So it was like at night, I was talking to my mom, and she was standing like away from the entrance of her room, like closer to her bathroom, and we were talking, and I was facing the hallway. And I remember I turned to look at the hallway, and I saw a fucking man. He had to be like over 6 foot easy, tall, skinny, white, with sunken cheekbones, big blue eyes, and he had a bowler hat on, and he was wearing a black suit. If we were to pick him out from a time period, it would probably be like 1920s attire. But he had like a bowler hat on, okay? And yeah, clean shaven, white, with sunken cheekbones, and these like crazy blue eyes, big, just staring at me. And it wasn't like an evil stare. It wasn't like a malicious grin. It was just like him staring at me, like stone face, just staring in my soul. And I remember I freaked out. I like jumped, and I was like, oh my God, who the fuck is that? And my mom saw my reaction, and she's like, what happened? And I looked at her, and I was like all shocked, like, and then I looked back, and he was gone, fucking gone. And I stood there like, oh my God, did I just see a ghost? I have to have seen a ghost. Like, that was the craziest thing I've ever experienced in my fucking life. To this day, I'm an adult now, and I have never experienced something like that. And I just remember standing there in shock because I was like, did I just see a ghost? Like, it was so real. He looked so real. And then he was gone. And then that's not the craziest thing. I remember living in the house was always unsettling. I remember going to bed at night and feeling like someone was always staring at me. Like walking in the dark through the house, I would always feel like a presence. Like I felt like someone was like right there, like watching me. And I always felt so like uncomfortable ever living in that house. The entire time I have lived in that house for almost 5 years, and I always felt uncomfortable living there. And the craziest thing is, not only did that happen to me, my mom, one day, it was like a school day, we were all at school, my dad was at work, and she was like washing the dishes, and she looked out from the window, and from the window in our kitchen, we could see the backyard, and we had a pool. They had a pool in the house, and it was like right before it started snowing, so it was already cold. They had the pool was already covered up, and my mom said she looked up and she saw a toddler. She said she saw like a kid. She said probably like not even 2 years old, running towards the pool. And she freaked out. She's like, oh my God, there's a baby running towards the pool. And she said the baby was only in diapers. And I was like, huh? So she told me this baby was in diapers and running towards the pool, and she freaked out. So she said that she like stopped, she like ran out, to go stop this kid from getting hurt. And the kid was gone. She didn't see the kid anymore. She said she stood there like trying to look for this kid. She said she looked around and nothing of the sort. And she said she stood there for like at least 5 minutes. Like, I swear to God, I just saw a kid run towards the fucking pool. And to this day, we don't know. And our neighbors too didn't have kids. Like, our neighbors on each side, they had like grown-ass teenagers. It was like a retired couple, and then like the other one was like teenagers. So like no babies in sight. And she said it was like this little tiny white baby that ran towards the pool. And she freaked out, and she was so convinced that that house was haunted, because every time even she would like feel uncomfortable being by herself all day in the house. Just like, she'd find excuses to like leave and go out because she didn't want to be there by herself. Like, to this day, I remember living there feeling so uncomfortable. And when I was 18, I moved out to go to college. And we're from LA, so I moved back to LA to live with my grandparents. And I just remember feeling so much more comfortable, like living with them, because like their home, I've never felt that presence. And the craziest thing is, the home they live in is old. They've been living there, like that house was built in the 1920s. And they have been living in this house since the late 80s, early 90s. So they've been here for a minute, and I've never felt uncomfortable. I've always felt like totally fine. I've never felt weird presences. I've never felt anyone watching me. It's always been like super, super chill living in this house. But that house in fucking Chicago, in Naperville, Illinois, was so unsettling. And like, my parents don't live there anymore. Like, they moved out. My mom, when my sister moved out for college, she was like, we're moving out. And they moved out ASAP. Never have I lived in a house so unsettling and uncomfortable. And I don't know if it's like the area. I don't know if like you grew up in Chicago, but like, is that a thing? Is like there a man, like a ghost, like a bowler man? Or what is it called? A man in a bowler hat, a white man in a bowler hat. Is that like a thing in Chicago? Like, do people see him? Because I saw him, and to this day, I can't explain it. Like, I'm really like, I don't really believe in a lot, but that shit, I believe in ghosts now. I do. And I saw that man as clear as day, and I don't know who the fuck he was. And if anyone knows, I would love to get insight on that, because that was the creepiest experience of my life.
And I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds like unbelievable, but I saw that man. My mother saw that baby. I don't know what the fuck. That house is fucking haunted. I hope the people that live there now are not experiencing what we experienced. But I don't know, guys. I don't know. I want to know more about that man.
The part about those bright, piercing blue eyes really gets me. I'm just picturing that it gives off like someone is staring into your soul. And it just makes you wonder like what he was there for. If he didn't really do anything besides stare, like why was he there? Did he used to live in the house? Did he used to live on the land before it was developed? I don't know, like what's he doing there? It's weird. And then to later see a kid just kind of like running around the backyard when you know that there are no kids nearby. I don't know which one is creepier. I have a thing against ghost children because they have a tendency to not actually be children, but entities trying to make themselves seem less dangerous by cosplaying as children, one might say. So I kind of have a bias against ghost children. It just seems like there's a lot going on in this house specifically. And, you know, she asked the question, like, is this common for the Chicago suburbs? I personally, I haunted my house when I was growing up, but I never had those kinds of experiences. Did see shadow figures because I played the Ouija board and haunted my house. But my parents moved to a different house and had no issues in that one. Can't say my family specifically had anything scary paranormal happening. Anything that paranormal that has happened has always been like light and resembled like family members coming back to visit. Nothing like that. nothing like weird men from the 1920s with piercing blue eyes or children running through the backyard. So I think that is more of a unique experience. Can't speak for everyone in that area, but nothing that I've ever experienced. So our next TikTok is by the user The Holistic Health Fairy. In this story, she tells us about an encounter she had while visiting her grandma in Florida in the middle of the night.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So when I was about 14, I went to go visit my grandma in Florida. Florida has always been a spiritual place for me ever since I started visiting there when I was like 12 or so. So honestly, if anywhere this were to happen, it would be Florida. At this time of my life, I was really getting into Wicca and like empathy and the clairs and psychic abilities in general. I was really starting to understand that humans have the access to psychic abilities, and this really fascinated my 14-year-old brain. My grandma's house was always a little bit creepy to me. She just moved to a new house in Florida this year, and I was sort of like, okay, it's a little weird in here, but whatever, it's probably just my nerves. I would hear weird sounds. Sometimes I felt like I was hearing footsteps, but I would talk to my grandma the next day, and she said nobody went over to that side of the house in the night. I would sometimes feel like I could see figures out of the corner of my eye, but I just played it all off as it was just me. The final straw was when I woke up in the middle of the night one night. Bear in mind, it was 3 a.m. and ever since I was a little kid, I've always been super antsy about being awake at this time because the energy is just so much. I was sharing a bed with my sister in my grandma's house in Florida, and she was fast asleep snoring. I looked over to the left to like the bedside table that was by her side of the bed. And the rosary that normally was like hanging off of the lamp on that side started to sway left and right. And I remember I was like, okay, there's no fan on. The AC isn't blowing that strongly. Like, what is going on? And remember, it's 3 a.m., so I'm literally already pissing my pants. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway so clearly, and the closet door of that room started to make like a sound. It was like a sort of like a creaking sound, like something was moving in it, but not like moving around a lot, like something was just standing there and it was creaking because of the weight on the floorboard, if that makes any sense. I looked back over to the moving rosary because I was so freaked out and I was about to go turn on the lights, and literally as I was like, okay, I'm turning on the lights, a candle turned on that was on that same like nightstand. It had like a lamp, a picture, a candles, the rosary, some other stuff. The candle created a flame. It turned on. Candles don't turn on, so I absolutely started to lose my shit. My first instinct was to wake up my sister, even though she was a lot younger than me, just to see if she also saw what I was seeing. As I started to wake up my sister, the candle went back out. Excuse me? Moral of the story, I turned on the lights. I basically stayed up until the next day. I told my grandma, and she said that she had collected a bunch of antique tea kettles from an estate sale, and that ever since she got them, she did notice some weird things were happening. My grandma is super into the spiritual world and Christian, and honestly, I just would have liked a warning. So I would like to hear your ghost story now as well, and I have plenty of others if you'd like to hear them.
I don't know about you, but I have never had a candle light itself. Unless the candle was not properly put out, that should not be happening. And unless the candle was not properly put out recently, that shouldn't be happening. That doesn't just happen like hours later. So there's not really an explanation for that. Like, that in itself is crazy. You know, maybe the rosary could have gotten like a gust of AC or something and was a little breezy. But even still, the fact that it is a rosary in itself and she's experiencing these weird things kind of lends itself to the idea that it's all connected. And, you know, creaking coming from the closet is not so great either. I personally, big fan of creaky floors, but I would hate to hear creaking on the floors when no one is walking over them, or no one I can see walking over them, especially in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. in a home that I am not quite as familiar with. All of that just kind of adds up to a really frightening experience. She said that she's very in tune with that kind of stuff, so it definitely could have been something trying to reveal itself to her now that she was in their space and they wanted to be known. Doesn't really seem like it was necessarily dangerous, but obviously if you're not expecting it, it can always come across as scary. So I don't know. It is really interesting that all of those things just kind of happened one after another at 3 in the morning. Our next TikTok is for the user Bean Claire. She tells us a crazy story from when she was 13 years old. She experienced a ghost girl hiding from a man ghost.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I'm a little late to the game, but I've been really trying to work up the nerve to tell one of my many ghost stories, but I've been nervous about it because I do feel like these stories have power around them, and if I talk about it too much, weird stuff starts to happen. Buttercup is already here. She always knows when I'm gonna start talking about some weird shit. Let me just start off by saying I've always been very sensitive to like energy around me. I can always sense when there's spirits in a room or something like that, and like if you don't believe me, that's fine. Most people are a little like wary about it, whatever. But it was very prominent when I was like preteen, like 11, 12, 13 years old. And I lived in this house, and the backyard was mostly woods. And I had my own room. And how the room was set up, like the doors here, and then along the wall, there's 2 closets, like open door closets. You can see right through them. So bedroom door, first closet, second closet. And across from the second closet was my bed. So my bed, you could look directly into that closet. You could see into this closet, and then you could see the front door. I had a very uneasy feeling living there, like from the start. I was only there for a few years, but there was some weird stuff that happened. I won't go into too much detail, but the stuff that had been happening, it scared me so bad I started sleeping with the lights on. And I slept with the lights on for like a whole month. And I remember keeping a journal that I lost in the move, unfortunately. I kept a journal of when I was like waking up in the middle of the night. I was waking up at 3:04 a.m. every night for a month. Exactly 3:04. I'd wake up, I'd look at my clock on my nightstand, 3:04, I'd write it down. I'd write about whatever I was dreaming about, whatever I saw. I always felt uneasy when I woke up. Try to go back to sleep. I usually could. Exactly a month. The last night of the month that I've been waking up at 3:04. I couldn't go back to sleep. And I'm laying there and I'm laying there. I'm like, oh my God, what the heck? And I felt cold. Like, I had my blankets up. I felt so cold. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm like looking around my room. And I go, oh my God. And my bed is facing this closet. And then there's the other closet. And I see a little girl. I say a little girl. Like, she was probably about my age, maybe a little younger. At the time, I was like 13. So she was probably 11 or 12. Crouched in the corner of my closet. I froze. She was like it looked like she was hiding, like I was like, girl. And I pulled the covers up over my head, and a minute goes by and I pull them back down and she's standing in my closet. She's standing there and I'm shaking, but she wasn't scared. She didn't look scary. She looked scared. She looked terrified. And I was like, oh my God. I pulled the covers back over my head. I pulled them back down, and now she's out of the closet. She's out of the closet. She's like standing by my bed. And I'm like, oh my God. And I finally figured out, okay, don't put the covers over your head. She's gonna just stand there, and then like she'll go away when the sun goes out. I'm standing there, I'm looking at her. She's standing there, I'm looking at her. And she goes, like, I said, what? And I went to go say something, and she panicked and she went, shh, shh. And I like just looked at her, and she said, he's coming. And then ran back into my closet. She crouches back down. It's like 3:30 at this point. 10 minutes later, like 3:40, 3:45, a figure of a fucking man shows up in my bedroom doorway. Like, I can see that. And I'm just frozen. I don't move. I don't pull the covers up over my head. I just watch him. And I didn't go back to sleep. My alarm went off for school at like 6:15. I just let it go. And like the sun came up and he disappeared. And then I got ready for school. And that's it.
Honestly, I really think we hit the jackpot with stories for this video, because that is crazy. Was there like some kind of intentional buildup before she saw the girl, that it was every single day for a month she woke up the exact same time, and then on the final day that she woke up at that time, the little girl was there? Like, what are the odds that she would stop waking up at 3:04 after doing it for a month after that experience? So weird. But the fact that it's like this little girl is kind of creeping out of her closet and panics when she starts to say something, and it seems like she's afraid of some man, then to have a man appear in her doorway, my mind is like going wild with all of the possibilities. Like, part of me worries like maybe something similar to that series of events would happen in that house before she moved in. Like, maybe in the past there was a girl who had some kind of father figure or male figure. Maybe she was even, like kidnapped, and it was no one related to her, and she was afraid of him and would hide in the closet. That's like a very extreme end of the spectrum, but maybe like she's stuck there and so is he. Like, crazy theories. None of them proven or even suggested in the slightest, but that's just where my mind goes. Like, I would be so curious to hear the history of this house after hearing the story. It's crazy that she has this interaction with a spirit, and it's like it's hiding from another spirit. I don't know. So crazy. Our next TikTok is by the user Slaw9891. She shares an EVP she caught in the early 2000s when she was ghost hunting in her house with her brother.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Okay, so I have an EVP from a very long time ago, probably like 20 years ago. We used to live in a super haunted house, and crazy stuff happened there all the time. And this is when Ghost Hunters was like super popular. And my brother decided that he wanted to go around the house with a recorder and record things, and see if we got any response. Now, mind you, he's like 6 or 7 while he's doing this. So I'm going to play it for you, and I'm not going to tell you what we think it says. I'm going to see if you think it says what we think it says. But everyone we've ever played it for has said that this ghost is saying the same thing. So you're going to hear my brother start asking questions. And he's going to say, "Can you make a noise for us? Can you tell us your name?" And you're going to hear almost like whispering start happening like over him. And then he's going to walk back to where his and my bedroom were, and they were right across the hall from one another. And he's going to say, "No, don't go there." And he's talking about his room. Now, mind you, my brother slept with the lights on. I'm not talking about a nightlight. I'm talking about the lights on. Like, he hated being in his room, and he definitely was not going to be in the dark. So he gets back there and he goes, "No, don't go there." And then you're going to hear something. And I want to know if you hear what we hear.
Ask a question. Ask a question. Could you make a noise for us? Hello? Tell us your name. No, let's grab on the stairs. It's walking in the room first. Don't go there.
I still, like, I have literal goosebumps. I still get freaked out when I hear that. So you tell me, did you hear what we hear?
I don't really know what it says. I feel like I can kind of hear "go away," but I definitely think that there's more to it than that. I just can't tell what it says. Reading through these comments, there's a lot of people that believe it says we're stuck in the stairs. And I think I can kind of hear that after it being brought to my attention, but I definitely would not have come to that conclusion on my own. So I am very curious to hear what you guys think it says. In the comments, the creator also says that it is easier to hear when the volume is not turned up all the way, when it like isn't blaring. So maybe that could help if you guys are really intent on trying to figure out what it says. I would love to hear your opinions though, because I can definitely hear that something's being said, but I really don't know what it is. Our final TikTok of the video is by the user Internet Dreams. He tells us about his cousin he used to live with, who turned out not to be his cousin.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I did a lot of my growing up in Orange County, and up until I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old or so, I was living in an apartment complex in Santa Ana on Highland Street. And in that apartment, I lived with my cousin who was around my age, my aunt, my parents, and my older sister. A lot of my time there was spent hanging out with my sister and my cousin because a lot of the kids were older than me, and plus we didn't stay there for too long, so whatever. So yeah, anyway, years after we had moved on from that place, I was taking a trip down memory lane with my mom, and the topic of that apartment came up, and sorry, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, so yeah, the topic of that apartment came up, and I asked my mom, like, "Hey, whatever happened to that cousin that we used to live with?" Because, you know, ever since we moved out of that apartment, never heard from him again. And, you know, my mom looks at me kind of perplexed, and she sits me down and she goes, "Okay, I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told anyone else in the family before because I didn't want to scare them." And, you know, I was kind of confused at what she was trying to get at, but basically she goes on to say that that kid was in that apartment when we moved in, and that kid was a ghost. And what this kid would do is he would run up and down the hallways and look into everyone's rooms. And that's how my mom first noticed this kid. And he would never go into her room And her guess is probably because she was an adult. But because I was around his age, he would always be in my room, playing with my toys, hanging out with me, talking to me, whatever. So yeah, I don't know. It's been years, and I still think about that kid all the time. But you know, the funny thing is, I couldn't tell you a single detail about what that kid looked like. Eye, hair, skin color, I don't know. Clothes that he wore, what his voice sounded like, couldn't tell you. And my mom can't tell you either. She doesn't remember. All she remembers is that there was a kid in that house that ran up and down the hallway. And all I knew is that there was a cousin around my age and we hung out all the time. But yeah, I don't know. Funny story. I got more if you want them.
I feel like that would be one of the most mind-blowing things I had ever heard if I was him. Like, what do you mean the cousin that I used to live with was actually a random ghost that lived in the house before we even moved in? Like, that's a crazy sentence. I've never heard of anything like that before. The fact that she just like let him think that it was his cousin all that time and it was just a random child that was a ghost. I'm assuming she probably like had ways of knowing that it was a ghost and not a real child, because that'd be kind of weird if you just like assumed a real child as a ghost and let them live there with you. The whole thing is really, really weird. It's just mind-blowing to me that she like kept that up, that it was his cousin, and just went along with it. And that this ghost was apparently that realistic and showed himself that frequently that he thought it was his cousin. That is crazy. It is kind of nice though that he apparently had some company and people who welcomed him in and wasn't afraid of him. And I hope that future tenants of that apartment also did the same, and you know, he wasn't alone, because it's kind of sad that there's a little kid just apparently trapped in that apartment and being told that he's somebody's cousin. Wow, that's crazy on an entirely different end of the spectrum. But that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite story was and any thoughts you have on any of the stories I shared with you today. Please follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I post spooky special effects makeup content over there. Add me on Snapchat. I vlog my days on my story over there. And if you guys like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. I will pop a couple recommendations on the screen here for you in a second. Please click the subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and turn on my post notifications so you never miss a video. I post every Sunday and sometimes Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.